Welcome to Worth It, Work It, a career-minded show for the anxious and ambitious. Today, we have a fantastic panel of women who all work in television and video production. They've been in front of the camera and behind it, and I'm excited for you all to learn about their careers. Without further ado, let me introduce our awesome panel today. Madeline is a proud member of the Embassy Washington news team, working as a production assistant and weekend news editor for the local affiliate station. She double majored in acting and broadcast journalism at NYU and may or may not have moved to DC for its large array of museums. Welcome, Madeline. Julia is a fellow colonial at George Washington University, studying political communication and LGBT and sexual studies. While finishing up her senior year, Julia also works as a production assistant for the female news analysis series To the Contrary on PBS. She's dedicated to the cause of advancing women's position in the media, and I want to thank her for joining us today. Last but not least, we have Kat. Kat is a storyteller joining us from the Smithsonian Digital Studio. When she's not at work, Catherine is an active volunteer with DC's Film Festival scene, or she can be seen running laps around the Lincoln Memorial. Kat has worked on a variety of film productions, from music videos to nonprofit productions, and I'm excited to bring her experience to the panel. Welcome, guys. So I kind of want to start things out with a simple question, but what is your current position like and kind of like the day-to-day of your job? And I'm going to start with Kat.
Okay, knew it.
Yeah.
So the day-to-day is not super glamorous. I do a lot of admin support, so that means building contracts, making sure invoices get through, processing things like that. I kind of live in Excel spreadsheets, but what's cool is it gives you the framework of understanding what it takes to get productions done. So I learn a lot of organization skills, a lot of detail management, things like that. A lot of emails, a lot of phone calls, following up on things, making sure little tasks get done. Yeah.
Excellent. And Julia?
My day-to-day for PBS consists of scheduling the panelists for our show on Friday. So every Friday we have a live taping at the WIDA studio in Virginia.
Okay.
So making sure, that they know the topics, that they are informed on what we're going to be talking about, and just making sure that they can stick with the schedule and they'll have enough time to express what they would like. And also another part of it is doing the press releases, doing the media, and making sure that we're going to get a great audience to see what we have.
So for finding panelists, how do you go about that? What's that process like?
One of the resources that I use for finding panelists is SheSource Women's Media Center.
Okay.
It's an online brain trust of female experts who are educated in an array of topics, and you can contact them directly. And it's great because a lot of them are based in the DC, New York area. So if we contact them with, a few days in advance, they're more than willing to come down. And it's been great. Our last show, we focused on the pay gap and Jennifer Lawrence writing that letter for Lenny letter for Lena Dunham's company, and we had wonderful panelists for that. So that's a great resource to use.
Awesome. And Madeline, what's your day like?
Okay, well, 3 days a week I work as a production assistant, and my primary role is getting videos from other NBC affiliates. So let's say there's something happening in Baltimore. We're not there, but we have an NBC affiliate in Baltimore. I get it, we make it happen, and it's usually happening at 5:59 right before the show, but what can you do? And then on the weekends I work as an assignment editor, so I'm the one with all the police scanners blaring in my ears, and I'm working with the producer and the reporter to figure out what is the best story of the day and how can we go about that. So if my reporter's out working it on the scene, I may be trying to find other sources through social media or through viewer calls, things like that, and making sure we have all the elements to get a good show.
And now, is this kind of what you expected the job to be like when you first signed up for it, or is it kind of surpassed?
No, not at all. I mean, I got hired to work 3 days a week as a production assistant on the night side team, which my primary role was running scripts, which is very important, as everyone can agree. Yeah, it is. And then, but the assignment editor job, it really came out of the blue. I just started working more with the desk, and they said, this is an opportunity that we think you should do, and I said, okay. And it was way more responsibility than I expected, and didn't realize how important it is to know where all your trucks are and where all your everything. But it's been really great.
Yeah, so it sounds like you guys have a lot of it's a lot of organizational skills, maybe that weren't as expected to be. Kat, could you kind of speak a little bit more on what you're doing on the Excel spreadsheets and everything?
Oh my God. Managing revenue share, which I don't think I'm qualified to do in any way, shape, or form. I'm not an accountant, but quickly to the point of things kind of growing into different capacities. I began at Smithsonian working for the SI coordinator's office, which I just helped approve programs for air. So I helped that process get moved along. Receive notes from reviewers, experts, either they're internally SI or you go out and find them externally, get them approved. Everything's improving, as I'm sure you know in news. It's just everyone has to sign off or upper level sign off on things. But my role expanded into digital studio because I began a relationship with them too. They needed admin support. So for the digital studio work I do, the Excel spreadsheets I live in are just tracking. It's a matter of tracking every movement you're making. So every invoice you get, every cameraman you're paying, every location you're paying to film at, things like that. So it's just keeping that all quantified, all detailed, and organizing it in a manner that's sustainable. So someone, you know, wherever we go off to in life, when someone else is in your role, they'll be able to dissect that and understand it. If questions are called upon later, that things have to be double checked. And I've been in many situations where my predecessors didn't really think about that factor so much. So I think working in establishing a system that everyone agrees on, whether that's file naming or invoice naming or tracking in some aspect, and then really sticking to that, as difficult as it can be, just keeping up that energy to be on top of it's really important for your office down the line or for your production company down the line. Really fun. I love color coordinating. You know, bold means something, unbold means something too. So really working on those details and keeping to them is important.
So a lot of multitasking.
A lot of multitasking. Many hats, yeah.
So when I'm looking at job postings, I like to kind of just keep abreast of like what's going on, what do jobs look like nowadays.
Sure.
I feel like social media and writing are two of the main skills that I see pop up on like no matter what the media job is. Could you guys kind of touch on like what you guys do on social media, maybe what your experience is at like on it on a day-to-day basis, or you could speak onto the writing part too, since I know you guys do a lot of writing for your jobs. We can start with Julia.
For the social media aspect, my job consists daily of making sure the Twitter's updated, making sure the LinkedIn's updated, and so the show I work for is called To the Contrary, and we hashtag TTC on just about everything. And we really want our viewers to know what's going on. We want to give them the most unbiased news that we can, and so one of my responsibilities is linking to sources that can kind of give them that and can inform them, because I'm sure we all know this now, the media is everywhere. They are always, you know, writing on news stories, and it's amazing to see how many different news stations can take the same story and kind of flip it and change the angle. So we really want to make sure that we're informing our viewers, and then hand in hand with that, at the end of every week, we do a little quiz, you know, just to kind of make sure that they're staying up to date, they're learning what they need to. And it's nice because it's based on stories that are relevant to them, something attaching to women's rights issues, and I really enjoy doing it. It's great. And then also going along with the organization aspect, we have a Google Doc that I don't know what we would do if we did not have it, but it is color-coded to a T, and we have a calendar that is color-coded with all of the interviews, all of the news stories we posted, just to make sure that everyone in the office is on the same page and that we're informing our viewers along the same lines with all of the same stories. So it's great.
Yeah. And so, Madeline, I guess your social media experience is probably a little bit different than Julia's in the sense that you're keeping track of news on social media?
Exactly.
Okay.
So the blessing and the curse of, I would say, our digital age is that everybody can be a reporter now. And because they're on the scene, and that's great. But the fact is, how do you filter through that, and how do you get that? So one of the bigger things for us is if there is a video that goes viral, or let's say even yesterday, there was a motorcycle accident and the motorcycle burst into flames, which is crazy. And somebody took pictures, sent them to us, right? We wouldn't have known about that because we can't be everywhere. So it was being able to call that person and say, hey, what's going on with this? Can you tell us what you saw? And then following up the official report. So it's really monitoring that and filtering through like what is a real story, and also getting the legal clearance for that, because since anyone can be a reporter, if you don't go through the pathways, anyone can sue you. So so it's really so it's really monitoring that and trying to really verify everything you see and to tell, you know, two sides of every story.
Excellent. And then, so for Kat, is your experience similar to either one of those or a little bit different?
So my social media experience is probably more relevant to independent productions I do on the side.
Okay.
I really don't have a hand in it for the Smithsonian work I do every day, because it is a massive institution and there's someone specialized just for that one role. The work we do with our digital studio, it's internal work, so they're legal bindings that we can't directly outreach, unfortunately. Hopefully in the future those walls get broken down a little bit, but it's very bureaucratic in its establishment. So I'm not really able to tweet from the digital studio, which would be really fun because we do awesome things.
Yeah.
But there is a kind of a bridge that's not connected there yet.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, you're working for the federal government in a way.
Yeah,
with
it's interesting.
Smithsonian.
I get Columbus Day off and fun holidays, but I'm a trust employee. I'm not an official government employee, so it's a weird a weird line to walk. Yeah.
So now I kind of want to take you back into
gosh.
kind of your past and just kind of what led you to your current career. If you can kind of like highlight maybe some major points, like maybe it was your major or a certain professor that really kind of helped you reach where you're at today, like your current position. And we can start with Julia.
So I'm still in school. I'm a senior, George Washington, as you said in the introduction. But I would say my aha moment was watching Misrepresentation. That film, it's an amazing film. And at the time, I was working as a production assistant at Paramount Pictures on a comedy show that aired at Nick at Night. And I loved the fast-paced environment. I loved the people I was working with. But one thing that really struck a chord with me was that the writers had no problem kind of playing into the stereotype of, for a kid show, writing in the dumb blonde or the popular girls were always the cool girls. And it really upset me, and I kind of stumbled across Misrepresentation and was instantly obsessed with that documentary, and ended up doing as much research as I could, contacted Women's Media Center because I noticed that most of the women who were featured, that was their little subtitle. So I sent them like a 3-page email being like, "You've changed my life, you've opened my eyes, oh my gosh, what is the media doing?" And ended up hearing back a week later from Kate McCarthy, who's been my boss now for the past 3 years. So I've been doing part-time work for them, doing consulting, doing research, and it's been an incredible experience. But that was definitely my aha moment because I was 19 when I first saw that film. I'm 21 now, and I very consciously think about the media now and how I'm representing myself and how young women, you have to think about that. And that film just completely opened my eyes. So I'm so thankful for the work I've been able to do with Women's Media Center and for that film. It changed my life.
I love that it was a film that set you off. Like, I feel like you can take classes and you can have all this work experience, but sometimes it's just like that one thing you decided to watch that can kind of set you on a whole new path.
That's the power of it, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's
what's
what I
so
love.
cool.
It's great.
So for you, Madeline, you majored in acting and
correct.
broadcast
Yeah,
journalism.
that's correct.
So, I mean, you're kind of where you want it to be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Could you kind of touch on like your education, kind of how that led you to?
Sure,
where you're
yeah,
at?
I can do that if you like.
Yeah.
And then if you want, I can tell you about how I got
Yeah,
my
no,
job,
definitely,
which is
that
like,
too.
the show is for the anxious and the ambitious, and that was
Yeah.
me a year ago.
Yeah.
I mean, still both.
I think it's more. I'm just very interested about hearing about
The
acting,
acting?
classes.
Yeah, okay. So, all right,
You
let's
look
make
calmer back here than the rest of us.
Yeah.
It does like sit
Right.
better on you.
so the acting major. So I always was doing theater as a
Alright.
kid. Was one of those kids that like wouldn't shut up. So my mom's like, go on stage and talk to someone else. So I was always doing that, and I wanted to major in acting when I was in high school, and so I auditioned, and I really wanted to go to NYU because I wanted to live in New York, and the acting program is great. And so I auditioned, I got in, but I always wanted to double major because I feel like education is the most important thing in life, and even if I'm going to be an actor, like I'm going to be a better actor if I know what I'm doing
Exactly.
outside of just being on stage. So I really wanted double major. First, I was a history double major. That lasted for like a week. And then I took a journalism class, and I'd always loved the news, and I took that class, and I was like, wow, this is what my double major is. So it was interesting because the first part of college was acting, and the second half was all journalism.
Oh, okay.
And the acting totally informed the journalism because what acting is being comfortable with yourself and learning how to listen. And that's what journalism is, is being comfortable in a story and seeing what's happening, and also being able to just really be present and to connect with your subject. So acting totally influenced that. And it also taught me how to really get into yoga and have good posture. So, so that helps too.
Very important.
Yeah, so there's that.
Yeah, and so how did you get to where you're at right now?
Right. So I decided I wanted to leave New York. I realized I loved acting, but it wasn't fulfilling me in the same way
Okay,
journalism was. And
nice.
I realized I would be just as happy doing community theater or, volunteering at a choir or something.
More of a hobby.
Exactly. I would
Okay.
be just as happy doing that and having journalism as my full-time career. So I was like, I'm going to move to DC. I got to get out of New York. Like, I miss trees. So, so I moved here. I didn't know anyone. And an acting teacher once told us, he came into class, it was our first day, and he said, all right, take out your notebooks and write this down. Who do you know? Who do you know who knows? And who do you know who knows someone who knows someone? And basically it was like, go through your entire contact list and realize that you are more connected than you can ever imagine. And just meet as many people, and the way you'll succeed is just by connecting with humans.
Yeah.
So I asked myself that when I got here, and I had a random connection through an old internship. And then I met from that person 2 people, from those 2 people 2 more people, from those, et cetera, et
A lot
cetera.
of Kevin Bacon, like
Totally. Oh, exactly.
degrees of
Right.
separation.
So it was just 6 weeks of networking, even though I hate to use that word because it sounds
Yeah.
slimy, but it was 6 weeks of just really connecting with people. And then I went into NBC for just a meeting, and they interviewed me for a job, and 6 days later I started.
Awesome.
So my advice for people there is talk to everyone you know.
Oh my God. Yeah. Drink lots of coffee.
Lots of coffee.
Oh my gosh.
Lots of coffee meetings, informational
Yes.
meetings.
Yeah. Always.
Cool. Wow.
So for you, Kat, could you kind of describe your path, and was there anything about the job hunting process that kind of like stood out to you? Maybe that's
gosh.
something that was certainly anxious for you about the
Yeah.
process?
Well, the whole process is just full of anxiety.
Yeah.
Riddled with it. But to touch on that briefly, it's like, I think the advice to really impart is to not get discouraged. Like, just, it's a matter of, it takes courage to put yourself out there and to really go for something. And that's an incredible, like, you have a meeting and they hire you. Like,
Yeah.
that's a dream world. It's amazing. So congratulations. That's cool. Yeah, but it's just, it's hard to learn that for every no, there's going to be a yes. So you just keep lending yourself out there, asking questions, and not being afraid to ask questions, I think, is really important. Being okay to admit you don't know something and being open to learning. So, the job process is it's just tricky. It's scary. It's tough. You send your heart and soul out to something and don't hear back. I think the most powerful way to maybe not network, because that word, you're right. It's like, it is networking, but connecting with people, because what's behind this whole operation is just people, right? So it's just getting in front of them, whether that's 5 minutes on the phone, finding a slot on someone's schedule, or having some coffee, or just asking questions in front of someone. Even if it's just emailing, you bridge that gap to eventually get in front of them. Just have conversations, and that's really what I've done. Most of my career after school was like a year of just getting coffee, and it takes time, and that's okay. And like right where you are, doing the best you can every day is where you're meant to be, and eventually things click. If you're really a storyteller, if you really want to be in this medium, things move. But career-wise, I think being a child, I always loved cinema. I really thank my family for that. We grew up watching movies together, and I've always fallen in love with that kind of storytelling, that narrative. It's just so magical and can really captivate you and take you to another world. So from a really young age, I knew I wanted to be involved with that. Like in what capacity, I had no idea. So it's taken me a while to find my footing in that. I went off to college, went to a tiny mountain school that specialized in teaching and nursing. And I always knew I wanted to help people in some capacity, and I really do believe that media can help people. And like your example of finding that opportunity, it connects. It can show you a different perspective. It can relate to people who could have never related to one another before. And that's really powerful. So figuring out how to harness that is still the thing I ask myself every day. But so I went to college and was trying to figure out my major. Had a really tough time picking a subject because I just couldn't. I would imagine something I almost did nursing, for instance. So I imagined doing that, and then a couple years down the road, I would ask myself what will fulfill me, what will make me feel complete, what will make me happy, and I couldn't answer that with any of the majors. So I kind of had this aha moment where I just admitted, I had this crack one night. I think I sat up in my dorm bed and was like, this is it. I just realized I want to make movies or tell stories through media. Long way around, I ended up studying communications, art, and business. That was my triangle way to support media somehow. And so totally, really honestly, an accident, graduated early, had no idea I was on track for that because all of those majors kind of canceled each other out. So I came home and then just started, I don't even want to say freelancing because everything was for free. So just started, one of us was mentioning asking questions and just going around and contacting like the random organizations I was connected to that I didn't even realize I was, because I'm from the Northern Virginia area. So came back home, tapped into, I'm connected to the Alexandria Police Department. So went to them, asked if they needed video in any capacity. Began doing a short documentary for them, promotional piece. It turned into this short documentary that's been very successful for me, which has been fabulous. So just looking into those dark crevices, turning over rocks to see where someone can benefit from video, and asking yourself how you can apply your skills and your passions to that. And so from there, I bounced around to a couple media agencies that I wasn't super happy with, just the workplace culture, which is so important. As you all know, the nature of this is like you put in the long hours, you work together, and really working with good personalities is important, that I've learned. I've had some very unfortunate people I've come across, but that's always a good lesson in life, of just people management, which plays into this a lot as well. And then a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend needed someone to fill in for a role at Smithsonian, and I got a call in the middle of the night from the SVP of programming, who is the woman who hired me. Her name is Cindy Kennard. She's a fabulous person, asking me to come in and chat, and then we just hit it off, and here I am. So it's, again, the thing of you never know who needs the resource of video or media, and you never know who you know through someone else. And just really pushing those options and those opportunities and asking questions, I think is really good.
And also touching upon that too, even if you don't necessarily have a direct connection to someone,
Right.
it never hurts to ask.
Yeah.
Especially if you see a woman in a role that you would be interested in, someone who's a producer, someone who's a reporter. Ask. It's okay to say, how did
Totally.
you get there? And they're usually more than willing to help.
Everyone loves talking about themselves.
Yeah.
So playing to, right, exactly. So really playing to that. I mean, LinkedIn is my Facebook. I'm on that thing
Yeah, I
scouring
mean,
constantly.
that's how I found all of you.
I was like, where did
I just typed in like production assistant or like different job titles and
Okay,
saw what
okay,
popped up
that
and
makes
hit like
sense. So there it
Washington
is.
D.C.
Yeah,
and
it's a
I was
perfect
like, okay,
example.
it's like cold calling. I was cold emailing everyone.
But
so-
it
works.
things, that's what runs a lot of like the admin stuff, or the little details that make this whole massive industry possible. That's what runs that, and there's no shame in that. I think swallowing pride and falling on swords, and just like realizing everyone starts somewhere, and you just have to connect. Like it's just those connections.
And also being grateful, I would
Yeah.
say.
Totally.
That's a good one.
Also being grateful, because, and most people are, but it's showing that, because a lot of these people, let's say producers, reporters, are getting a million calls a day.
That's
so
true.
what can you do to make it different?
Right.
Like number one, I would always start my cold emails with, hello from NYU grad, and then I put in parentheses how I knew them. So
Yeah.
if I was
Sure.
like,
Yeah.
connection through Dave, whatever. And then
Exactly.
they see that name and they're like, oh, and then they open it.
Right.
And of course, I'd always say, can we meet at your convenience? I would just
On your
appreciate
schedule.
advice.
Yeah,
Like,
totally.
advice, not
Yeah.
saying, hey, do you have a job for me? It's like, hey,
Yeah.
can we just talk?
You
And then,
just want to connect.
right.
Right.
And always write the thank you email the day of, and always write
Yes.
a handwritten thank you note. That is what I always
I
did.
love those.
I
Yeah,
agree
that's
with
the
you.
best.
It's that little extra touch that if you don't do it, just doesn't mean you're a bad person. But if you do it, like I got told by multiple people, the fact that you took the time to do that showed that you took this
Definitely.
seriously, and
yeah,
it wasn't
exactly.
just
You wanted the opportunity
Yeah.
too.
And you're
Yeah.
putting that energy in that gets out that benefit. Like you went in for a meeting and came out with a job.
Yeah.
yeah.
Like just going in to have a conversation, down, even 3 to 10 years down the line can reap so many benefits you can't even imagine. So it's just really focusing on just connecting with that person. I think you're right, definitely expressing the gratitude and really trying to learn about them. Maybe not like, I love your fancy glamorous job and like you probably drive a pretty cool car, like tell me about that. Like no, ask about their journey. What are they contributing? Like what makes them want to wake up and tell stories?
And make sure you do your research too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
Because that is so important. And I have seen that go poorly for so many people. And it breaks my heart because if you see what they're doing and you're passionate about it, don't just say, wow, that's so great. Dig deeper.
Yeah.
Do some research. Figure out how they started. And then ask them questions about their journey, their story, how they got there. Because people do like
Totally.
talking about themselves, but make sure you're
You
well versed
know.
on the subject.
Yeah, I mean, I think Google stalking is like actually an okay thing to do in the job search, just so you really know what to
1000%.
say before you approach
And
someone.
finding those connections too, like, maybe the school that person went to, your parents did too, or you're connected to some way, like, and you can relate to that. I think establishing rapport is really important, but finding that one little subject you can kind of talk on besides the weather is really cool. Like,
Yeah.
that's really helpful.
So I kind of want to go back to your jobs because production's a little bit different that it can be 24/7. I mean, I think two of you even have stuff to do like today, pretty much.
Yeah.
So I just kind of, if you could kind of touch on how you balance the 24/7-ness of your job with like like your personal life and
great
with
question.
your job?
Yeah.
'Cause I just, like I have production experience, and it can kind of just infiltrate your whole life in a way.
totally.
And I kind of want to start with you, just
Sure.
because I feel like you have a little bit of a more hectic position in the sense that you're news, so it's like a day to day, every
right,
day kind
right,
of thing.
right. So I would say, how do you find work-life balance?
It's a
learning.
personal
learning.
decision.
Right, right. Well, the great thing is, and as you mentioned, Kat, it's like the people, you know, who you work with. And the first thing is, I'm very lucky to work with a very supportive environment. So people listen, and if you're like, I'm really tired, like, you know, I'm having a rough day, people support that. So there's no need to be like work all the time. It's okay to be a human being in your work. That's what makes you good. But as far as actually like finding the time to make that all work, I usually say I always try to be at work on time, and I stay until everything is done and lined up for the next day.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's longer. Like I was at work till 2:30 a.m. last night because we had breaking news. But then there's some days where I'm looking at the clock because nothing's happened, and I'm like, okay, let's go home. So I would say it's just really when you're at work, being focused on that and getting everything lined up for the next day, so you know you're fully prepared. So when I do go home, I'm able to just let that go. You know. However, when I am going to work, like today, I have to go to work at 3.
Exactly.
I need to be on my phone beforehand if there's a story that breaks to give information of what I did last night to the people who are there this morning.
Okay.
But in general, if I've lined things up correctly, like if I've worked really hard that day and have all my ducks in a row and left a paper trail of everyone I talked to, then people are set up. So I'm able to really just enjoy my time off. So I say fully focus in both worlds. You know.
Yeah. Now, for you, Julia, you're balancing school and work. So could you kind of speak to that a little bit more?
It's difficult. It is difficult. But I will say, I'm going off what you said, getting everything done at work done. So if it's you have to do it for that day, making sure you do it because it'll reduce the stress load for the next day. And I'm running from work to class, back to work, and I'm still working part-time at Women's Media Center, so I'm organizing all of the honoree videos. And as of right now, don't really have much time. My social life is non-existent at the moment. But in a way, I'm okay with the work-life balance, mostly work, I would say, as of now. But I think it's going to take a stress load off of me for when I graduate in May.
Yeah.
Because I think that's when everyone, I mean, you guys can totally touch upon this too, but I feel like last semester of college is when everyone starts thinking about those things. And I want to be a little bit ahead of the game. I want to reduce the stress load so that I can enjoy my last semester of school, but also enjoy what I'm doing at work too. So I would definitely say just, staying organized. And if you have to do it that day, stay late. If you've made plans afterwards, you can always reschedule them. Like friends will understand that you have work, you have your social life, but if you made a commitment to work, do what you need to do for that day.
Excellent. Totally. And then, Kat, how do you balance it all?
Yeah, it's interesting because I have an appointment split, so I have studio and work with the channel, and then I'm in a production company on the side, and I'm involved in other groups. So it's an umbrella, it's a potpourri of
you wear a
different
lot of
things I'm
hats.
involved in. Yeah, and I love a lot of hats. I like to change them. I get bored easily. But I think just listening to you two and your great input, I have 2 things to offer. First being prioritizing. I think is huge. Like I love leaving, like turn off my light, leaving the office and knowing like tomorrow morning will be good, done what I need to do. But throughout the day, I mean, especially in your nature of production, like things just come up sometimes that you have to, fires come up. I mean, I call myself a firefighter sometimes because a lot of the work we do with different groups, it's just putting out fires. Something, someone misunderstood something, a payment didn't go through, easing that calm, and that can take up hours. So it's a matter of, assessing your day, having your plan of what you want to get done, what you hope to get done. But if things come up, realizing, ranking 1, 2, 3, what has the highest priority, and kind of filtering down that way. So if you did have to, if it's like 9 at night, which is ridiculous, you want to get home, you're human, you know that the things you need to get to, the emails you have to send, are low priority, and no one's gonna, and realizing like, people aren't dying over these things. Like checking back in with yourself, realizing, when the day's over, you've done the best you can do, and kind of coming to a calm with that, I think is really important. Because if you go home and you carry that stress with you, that can really become a habit that boils up that might not be the healthiest thing.
So we've so we've talked about your past and where you're at now. I'd love to know like your future plans, like where you see your career going or what you're excited about most for your careers. We can start with you, Kat.
Sure. Well, it's so interesting. So you went from New York to DC, and I grew up in Northern Virginia, and I have plans to kind of move up to New York next spring, so we'll have to chat.
Excellent.
And like, I'd love to get your input there. But I think I'm really doing my best to be aware of this new digital platform that we've all kind of been hitting on, how you know, we're watching a lot of content on our tiny little phone screens and really monetizing and taking advantage of that and putting storytelling in the best light with that. So the original goal, like, you know, coming out of college was LA directing cinema, but realizing that that's really transforming into different ways to do that. So the goal role for me is to be directing content, whatever capacity is best. So I think maybe like 5-10 years down the road, I definitely want to have a presence in LA and make cool stuff up there. And I really also want to have a presence on the West Coast. So I think I'm really working to just absorb everything I can learn from my role right now, and then trying to position myself in the best way moving forward, whether that's through programs up in New York or out in LA, or if that's through other programs in smaller areas that are satellite production hubs. It's just finding that best role. I'm not so much interested in like the location. I'm really trying to find the best opportunity where I can contribute my skills and benefit from the area around me, and I can give back as well. So it's a really big question.
Yeah, no, it is.
Life falls into that too. So I think I'm really just looking for that next good opportunity, and just trying to remain open to that, giving all you can to your current role with a perspective that nothing's forever and that it's always important to be on top of the next opportunity. So short story, I think probably New York for me in the next couple of years, not even shorter than that. So we'll have to chat on your input. Yeah.
Perfect. So Julia, you have graduation coming up. So what do you think your future plans are?
I hope my future plans consist of doing something with the intersectionality of women's rights issues, political science, and communication. I feel like with my major and my minor, I've had a good balance of kind of seeing how the media, sexism, politics, all of that is intertwined. And I feel like I've been really lucky with the work experience I've had, and I want to continue pursuing a career in this field, but I'm just hoping I can be more on the front lines of it. I've done a lot of post-production, I've done a lot of the writing, I do so many tweets, so much social media, but I really want to be on the front lines, and whether that is interviewing people or just sharing people's stories, I think that's kind of what I want my next move to be. I love talking with people and hearing about the journey that they're on, how they started, where they're going next. So hopefully just figuring out a way to get more women into the world of media and sharing their stories. So younger women like myself, you know, and like you guys too. Yeah. So they'll get more into this field because we need more women in this field. So that's what I'm hoping for.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
And to finish up?
Number one, ditto.
Yay! What they all said.
Great.
Right. But the long-term goal is, you know, I love storytelling. We've all said that. I know it's cliche, but it's true.
Yeah.
And I want to be where the story is. And if that is being out in the field, or if that's being at the desk and making that happen, I just want to make sure that we live in a world where everyone that has a story to tell can have a platform to do that. And if I can manage that, then, you know.
That's beautiful.
You said it perfectly.
That's the way to do it, because there's so many unique stories that you can't make up, that like nonfiction, real things happening every day that just connect people together, that are so important to have a medium.
So, well, that was a perfect note to end on. Thank you guys so much for joining us. I really think this was a great conversation. I hope everyone really learned something from your careers. But I'm just going to finish up here, but thank you. All right. I hope you all feel like you got a peek behind the curtain of what a career in production looks like. Join us next episode for a discussion on political journalism. Until then, stay ambitious.